Good morning, Annette. Always great to see you.
Let's start with the stats, where we are at. You've got the numbers in for July, and they're quite remarkable.
They are, and it's one of those, as we know, the Ottawa Real Estate Board always puts out their monthly stats behind, and so we wait for the numbers to come in. And so we have numbers for July and August. And one thing that we continually see is the fact that, it's not a chicken little kind of conversation where the sky is not falling, yet we continually see that we are done with the market correction and now we are more in a balanced market. And we've talked about this. We were waiting to get into this zone. So according to the Ottawa Real Estate Board, the fact is that, yes, we have seen now a drop in the average real estate price, which is just shy of $636,000 yet. And so that's a little bit of a drop. It's about a 1.5 difference, yet it is still an increase of like almost 5% year over year. So have we dropped monthly? Yes, yet we are still in an increase. So that's a really interesting stat that I find.
Okay, so the one for August, as you said there, sorry, I went back to July, but August, the average price in Ottawa was $635,000 for a home. That's a decline of 1.6% monthly
yes.
from July, but then from August of 2021, it's a 4.7% decline, which you're saying is not the sky is falling.
Yeah, so 4.7% increase. Yes. So what we are seeing is now a balanced market. What we are seeing is that we have risen to a different level, and now we are seeing more of a balanced market, which is what all realtors and all people should really be excited about, in the fact that there is opportunity now with the market correction finishing, and now we are in more of a balanced market. So one thing that I find people are concerned about is the fact that they are not seeing the craziness that we've talked about year over year, and that, you have 12, 14, 15 offers, yet now we are in a balanced market where you are looking at what your home is worth and you have the opportunity to join in. So now we are at a price point where the average home in Ottawa is staying the course. So for example, the board put out a stat where the average home price experienced a 16% decline from the peak of March. And this is where people are focusing, is the fact that, well, we're on a decline, yet it's kind of comparing apples to oranges, black to white. We had a crazy, crazy market for the last couple of years, especially during COVID time, and we had no inventory, and we're still seeing a lack of inventory. Don't get me wrong on that. So you can't compare black to white, apples to oranges. You just can't. So when you see these numbers that the Ottawa Real Estate Board puts out, where they're saying we are not seeing multiple offers. We are seeing a 16% decline, except they're comparing it to a market, right, respectfully, that was absolutely crazy hot.
Right, a market that is not the usual, the market in the last 2 years that was unusual. So almost an unfair, what you're trying to say, right, is like a bit of an unfair comparison. We almost should look back to where we were in 2019 if we want to take the pandemic time out of it in a way. Balance means, Colleen.
That's actually a great question. And there are three different types of markets. So there is the market that we are just exiting, which is very much a seller's market where you are getting multiple offers, and as you've seen, the market went kind of gung-ho, and it was absolutely, to a certain degree, for lack of a better term, it was nuts out there, right? And then we have a buyer's market, which we haven't seen in a long time, where there's so much inventory that buyers have their choice and have the control of which home they are going to bid on, and they have the advantage versus the seller's market, which the sellers had the advantage. Right now, we are moved into very much so a balanced market, which is the ideal market for both parties, as long as they have the education behind them and the information and the support that they need. So in a balanced market, it is not a teeter-totter where someone is in control of the other, whether it's a buyer or a seller. Now we are in balanced market. The teeter-totter is now in an even mode. And we now have an idea of the fact that if you're a buyer out there, a seller out there, you need to be reasonable in regards to your expectations. And this is where you have negotiating ability on both sides. And this is where you really also need to do your homework and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. You don't have an advantage as a seller anymore. You also, though, as a buyer, have the opportunity to possibly get into the home that you have been looking at.
So as a buyer, you have more options. Like you said, there could always be more inventory, but there is more. So that's a good element. So it gives, like you said, options for people looking to get into a home, not scrambling and taking the first thing they can find because there won't be anything else. And then sellers are going to have to adjust to this because they've heard of Joe down the street earning an extra 120 grand for his house last year. That's not happening anymore, right? We're not getting those multiple bidding wars anymore, and we're not going way over asking. So for sellers, it becomes more of a realistic price that you're putting it out there at, and that's what you would get. Is that accurate?
That's 100% accurate. And I love the fact that you brought that up, because one conversation that we're having with our sellers and should be having with our sellers is the fact that just because you want 1.5 million for your house, that and you're hoping to go into multiple, that is no longer the case. For listings that are out there right now, they're like, well, why haven't I gotten an offer anymore? And it's like, well, we're not there anymore. So the conversation you should be having with your realtor is an honest one. It's not a Debbie Downer one. It's just an honest one in the fact that we are back to a balanced market. You will go back to the traditional way of probably, depending on where you're located, I would say on average, it'll probably take about 3 weeks to sell your home. And you'll have to go through several showings and you'll have to go through negotiations. More importantly in that, now what we are seeing, the biggest switch when you are a seller, not only do you have to show well, you now have to look at conditions. And that's something we have not seen. So when we talk about conditions, when we talk about an agreement on your home and you accepting an offer, it may be contingent on maybe their financing isn't in order. They'll probably now do an inspection. Right now, we are pool closing, and that's something we should totally look at. And the fact, are you professionally closing your pool? We talked about it last time. I know that it's easy to close a pool, yet maybe this is a time where you're going to have to professionally close it. You are going to have to deal with different conditions where your home is now conditionally sold, not sold firm, for about 5 to 7 days.
So for all the buyers out there last time that were just throwing conditions out the window and just saying, I'm not going to get an inspection. Here's my money. I want this home. You know, like take it, please. Let me be the one because there's 15 other people that want it too. Now you have the time as the buyer to go through all of those options, that there's the time there. And some of them are really important, like an inspection.
Absolutely. And now we have the opportunity in a balanced market to weigh that time. So it might even be conditional depending on what level of home that you are buying. Some people are even putting conditional on selling their own home, right? Yet now it has to be ready to go on the market, and we're having those new conversations. Yet getting a building inspection. Now, remember this, for any viewer who's like, oh, I can do a building inspection, and I'm really excited about this, and there's a home that I really want. You have to have your building inspector booked too, right? So it can't be, you're not looking at 2 weeks time,
right?
You're looking at 5 days. The other thing as well is for all the people who are on rural properties, one thing that I would also share is that, do you have a water sample on file? Because you cannot get financing if you are on a well system unless you have a water sample that shows clearly that your water is okay. And it doesn't matter if you're like, well, what, my water is fine. Absolutely, we all believe that. You cannot get financing unless you have a clean bill of water health.